Well, on the other hand, I think most of you guys have heard of Scrum, have you?
Just now.
Just now. Is there anybody in here that has never ever heard of Scrum or done Scrum in some weird way or another? No. Great. Was it kind of?
Yeah, kind of. I don't know what it stands for, but I think I've scrummies.
Well. Okay, what it stands for, I'm not really going to cover that, but I'm going to cover scrum-masters quite extensively, as much as you can do in 20 minutes. So, like, scrum-masters, the good, the bad, and the ugly, that's the title it shows. That's why I tried to have at least 3 faces from the movie in the presentation as well. And these pictures are also Creative Commons, which is good. Scrum Masters, usually, like, if you think about Scrum teams, that might be your team, and actually the guy like in the middle, kind of the juror or the referee, that's most likely the role of a Scrum Master if you think of it in a good context, not in bad context. So who am I to tell you about stuff like that? That's all there is on that slide. My name is Markus. I've worked at Holiday Check for almost 2 years. I really love the company, but I left to tell other people about Scrum, and yeah, now I'm an agile consultant at a company in Zurich. I'm not going to say the name, but I'm not going to do any advertisements here, so I think that's a good thing. I've done Scrum for more than 5 years now. Ever since I moved to Zurich, I have seen like too many companies, especially big corporations and enterprise contacts with banks and insurance companies and SBB, so huge, monstrous things that want to kind of become agile. People don't usually know why they want to become agile, but some manager says we have to be agile or we have to do agile, because being agile and doing agile is something quite different, but we'll cover that later. So here I am talking about that kind of stuff. There usually is a problem. I mean, all of the attendees of the Google Developer Fest are in my session, I think. Well, I shouldn't be too cocky about that. But usually that means there needs to be a problem, for example, with your guys' Scrum Masters. Who of you guys have a Scrum Master who works in a Scrum team? 1, 2, 3, 4. No more. There should actually be more. That's sad. But maybe you don't see the person as a Scrum Master. That could also be the reason. So I guess the reason why some of you attend this session is there might be a problem with the Scrum Master. Maybe he doesn't bring enough value to your team. Maybe he doesn't really know how to apply the things he should actually know to your team. So there are some ways how you can actually get to know how far along the way he is, or she is, for that matter, and also maybe some ways how to make the person want to grow, also as a Scrum Master. So my question already: do you do Agile? Some of you do. Some of you don't have a Scrum Master. Some of you maybe do Kanban. Who does? Okay. So you don't really need a Scrum Master, but you have some kind of coach at some times. Okay, well, no, that's a different problem. You can do quite good Kanban combined with Scrum. I mean, you can do all kinds of processes with Kanban, but I'm not going to cover this either, so let's just skip. The question is usually when big corporations or even smaller corporations start with Agile, how much money are they actually willing to spend? Because just one manager saying, oh yeah, now you do Agile and now you're a self-organizing team, so self-organize, yippee, and I can just lean back and enjoy the ride. That usually doesn't happen, not in the long run. And that's in most cases the companies that kind of stop doing Agile and doing some boards, for example, but not really learning and improving and stuff like that. So that's the sadder part, and that's the main reason some companies just stop doing it after a year or 2 or 3, whatever. So if people aren't really motivated, if people don't keep on changing and don't keep on improving themselves, also the teams, also the developers. Most of the times, the good intentions stop, money is stopped, and then, well, companies switch back to whatever they did before, or try to find something else, or start Kanban with their old processes, or whatever. So usually it's a question of money, and that's where consultants come in. So that's in some cases why I get paid. But the point is with agile transitions, in some cases, the company actually tries to find scrum masters within their ranks. So there could be, for example, project managers that are just way too talkative and don't bring that much value as a project manager when you read themselves. So they say, well, now we do Scrum, so you're the Scrum Master. That can be a good thing. Like when people are good with other people, so that person is able to connect with the team, it's a first starting point. Maybe he should also know something about the whole technological things, because he was a project manager, so actually he should understand where he comes from. And then there's the third part, like of the knowledge bubbles, and that's the whole agile stuff. And in most of the cases, project managers don't really see what Scrum or any agile process can bring to the work, so they don't really want to get started with it. But that's just one kind of role that could switch to become a Scrum Master. Then, on the other hand, there's developers that say, okay, I don't really like the way we do stuff now. I think I could change. Maybe I want to be like a 50-person Scrum Master and keep coding and doing Scrum and kind of improve the way my team works and maybe even improve the company a little bit. There's also different problems with that role, especially like the people part. I mean, usually developers are good with developers. That's kind of family. But talking management is something different. And good Scrum Masters, especially when they want to change like the whole company and not just the surroundings of the one team, should really know how to talk management. If they don't, they will probably not succeed changing the company, but just bringing some improvement to the team, but not changing the whole environment and the whole thing, the whole parts where the teams work in, and that might be, well, a problem. But another thing, you can learn that. There's courses for that. I mean, there's loads and loads of things how to become better at communicating to different people in different jobs and kind of learn their vocabulary.
Can't we send the management to the courses to talk better for us?
Well, you can try. You can really try. And I mean, in some cases, there's one. There are managers that are great developers and know how to speak Dev, but most of them speak Dev now. So, yeah, sometimes team leads, or like in German, Teamleiter, become Scrum Masters when there is an agile transition. That's also some kind of a problem, because usually when you have them in the circle of trust, you should be able to tell your Scrum Master if he screws up. You probably wouldn't do that with your team lead. Not in a way you would do with somebody that's like on the same level with you. Because in the end, that person probably decides your bonus and could fire you in the worst case. So usually there's some kind of virtual boundary that happens when you have a team lead as a Scrum Master. It's not the perfect solution. You might have the team lead of one team being the Scrum Master of another team. That can actually work, because he already knows some manager talk. He has hopefully like some good position in the company to actually solve the impediments of the team as well. So that might work, but in most cases, if the manager or if the team lead is the Scrum Master of the same team, it doesn't work that well. Let's just stick with that. So when there is an agile, oh yeah, one thing. I was told whenever you have like percentage in a slide, you lose half of your audience. The only way how to like cope with that is cat pictures. I was told that. So whenever there is a percentage in any of my slides, there is a cat either next to it or in the same picture, just to like not lose you guys. So there's this 20, 60, 20 percentage. It's more like an educated guess. It might be a third, and a third. But usually there's like, when you do an agile transition, you have 20% of people that really don't want to do that. And some of them become scrum masters because they don't want to get fired. They just get that role because, well, it's not that important, right? I mean, it's just the guy that's like this kind of team secretary. Well, they probably won't really like their job, I can tell you, but at least they don't get fired, so yay. Then there's the 60%. That's kind of the bad, because we were like the good, bad, the ugly, that's the bad. That's kind of this cut, if you want to see it like that. Then there's the ugly. Have you watched the movie, like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly? In German it's called Zwei glorreiche Halunken, which is kind of a different name, because it's not two guys, it's actually three, but never mind, who's watched it? At least some. Okay. The ugly. He's not really the bad guy, he's not really the good guy, he's not the most clever one, but he's also not the most dumb one. He's just like some guy in the middle. He's kind of the average thing. So if we think about a Gauss distribution, you would have like 60% something. Most of the time, like team leads that become Scrum Masters fall in that general area. Or project leads that don't go into product development, but into like team leading, Scrum Mastery, whatever guys. And then there's the other 20%, which is like the good ones. That's still within your company. They know the company, they know where they come from, and they're also known for what they did throughout the last years when they were in your company. So they have some baggage. That can be a good thing, that can also be quite a bad thing, especially when you really want to change and people still have the same perception of you. So that might be a problem, but it doesn't have to. So, like I already talked about the bad, I just needed to have that picture in, especially the ugly. I think his eyes are just great. And as I said, the good guys, they usually start their transition into Agile. And if you have like an old colleague of yours that becomes a Scrum Master, there are some ways how you can tell if the guy is progressing along the way or not. That's what I'm going to talk in the next like 5 to 7 minutes. There's yet another way, if you do that. You can just say, okay, well, we're hiring. We hire Scrum Masters that have a certificate and say in their CV that they've done Scrum for, I don't know, 3 years, but if you ask them, they've never done it. They just heard about it. So finding out as a team that you get a new hire that says he does Scrum, but actually was a program manager or product manager or whatever, well, there are ways to tell where these people are. And that's what I'm going to start with. Actually, these, the next 2 slides, then there is one of mine, and the 4th slide, they come from another guy, at least the ideas of that. His name is Angel whatever, I can look it up. He's a great guy, he's a cool guy, he's a fun guy especially, and I really loved his talks, and I found these slides like online in some other places. But I think I kind of improved them a little bit. Don't tell him, because he's the crazy Spaniard. So, but never mind. So like the first stage that usually a kind of good or like an ugly Scrum Master is in is like the Scrum Dude mode. He's kind of the team secretary, he's the team scribe, maybe he even counts the post-its and does, you know, the lines on the burn down charts. Just the stuff that the team doesn't really want to do. And well, somebody's got to do it. He's the Scrum Master, so he's obviously going to do it, because otherwise the team says that's an impediment for us. He does, most of the times, at least the plans for the meetings, by the book. There's this one thing he read, and he has her certificate, he heard. In a retrospective, for example, you ask what went well, what went not so well, and then we find solutions, and hopefully they're going to work. In most cases they don't, but let's just stick with that. A guy like that to be in a, like I say, in a medium old team, like old in the sense of wine, not in the sense of age like people do, needs a great PO, because otherwise with a Scrum Dude, that team won't get far. Usually the team will along the way say, the dude's not cutting it for us. He's not good enough. He just does the things, but we didn't really see any improvements in the way we work or in our environment or whatever. So the Scrum dude needs to move on, which might bring him to the Scrum mom or Scrum grandmom. Like Antje says, it's the Scrum mom. I agree with him in most of the cases. So the Scrum mom is different. The Scrum mom, she or he, whatever, really moderates meetings. It's not just like, you set up the meeting and you have at least like a flip chart or something. She can really change like the meetings, have different retrospectives, for example, change the setup of reviews, even invite stakeholders, because most of the Scrum dudes just think about the team and don't really look for the whole surroundings and for the whole environment of the team. She really protects the team. There is no one that can, come to my team and I will kill you with this. No, I'm not going to do that. So the Scrum Mom is a really protective one. That's in some senses, it's a good thing. It really is. But she also stops the team from progressing. A Scrum Mom is great for a young team. The team needs protection. You want it to grow a bit in a safe environment. But nothing besides that. Like your mom maybe was when you wanted to move out the first time, like, do you really want to move out? And the world is scary and stuff like that. That's the Scrum Mom. She's usually great team interface. So she does things for the team. Maybe go to like operations teams and try to even change them a little bit. But most of the time she's really focused on the team. And what she also does is try like artificially to make harmony in the team. Like, even when there's a conflict, she tries always to like, oh guys, come on, be nice to each other, and we all just work here, and you don't have to like each other. Well, in some cases that's the case, especially in big banks and so on. So the Scrum Mom protects the team, and it's great to have a Scrum Mom when you're like a younger team, but when you're beyond it, the Scrum Mom will stop you from progressing. So, that's the slide I added, thanks to Jan Simon. There is the Papa Smurf Scrum Master. He's more like, especially Papa Smurf from the TV show, not the original comics, because that Papa Smurf, he was weird. But maybe he became into the good Papa Smurf in the TV show. But in the end, he really facilitates meetings. He tries to connect the team to the company. He tries to make the team talk to other teams, to give their knowledge about processes, give their knowledge about like development skills. He really tries to expose the team to the company, maybe even to the world. Proactiveness, like positive and constructive conflict. Like, okay guys, we see there is a problem. Let's do something. If it's guys, you usually drink a beer, then you slap each other, and that's good. It's different with girls, I know, but never mind. So the focus of the Papa Smurf Scrum Master is more like motivation and long-term effects, like to really progress the team. But then there is another one, and now I'm back with Antje's definition, the real Scrum Master, and that's in really just a few cases of like my breed in the world. He is an agile coach. I mean, really coach, not just to your company, maybe to your parent company or mother company. He goes to conferences and actually is an evangelist for your company, but also for Scrum or for any other agile method. I mean, when you have a Kanban coach, it's kind of the same thing. He's also, when he needs to be a devil's advocate for developers. Definition of fun, I know it's a weird topic at Holiday Check at the moment, but never mind. Also for the product owners, for stakeholders, teaching them, doing courses just kind of on the fly to progress the whole company and not just your team. As a real Scrum Master is somebody that shouldn't just leave the team for a month and go into another team just to make them work better with his team. So he just goes this extra mile, or she, whichever. So the real Scrum Masters, if you have one, well, you can really call yourself lucky. I'm exactly at 20 minutes now. I will need some 2 or 3 more minutes, but I hope it's.
Can I ask you?
Sure.
What's the difference between Scrum Master and Smurf father?
The Papa Smurf.
Papa Smurf.
Well, let's go just on this one. This line, actually this line. The Papa Smurf is still like in the state, he's like in the stage 3 if you want to call it like that. If a Papa Smurf gets a really young team, for example, if you switch through the teams, a Papa Smurf might have a problem because he's so used to a great development team that he progressed along the years that a new team might pose a problem for him because then he has maybe to go to Scrum Mom mode or to Scrum Dude mode. So the real Scrum Master can do it just like this. He can have, for example, 2 Scrum teams, a very like senior one and a very junior one, and have no problem switching the roles. Papa Smurf usually doesn't do that, in my opinion. But like that's not the canon of whichever agile organization that does the certification. So how can you guys improve your Scrum Master? Now you know how to like grade a Scrum Master, but how can you actually improve your Scrum Master? Well, most of us, I've talked to some of you guys already, we have this, well, most of us, all of us, we have this illusionary superiority. There are Wikipedia articles about it, there are articles in science about it. If you ask people, are you above or below average, 80% of people in whatever field will say, I'm above average. With drivers, it's 93%. At least the Wikipedia article. Oh, I wonder what the 7% mean, but never mind. So, usually, the same thing happens with developers and with Scrum Masters. So, we think we're really good at what we're doing because we don't get feedback. So, the first thing, oh, there was 80%, so that's the long pad for now. Actually, it's a grumpy pad, but no. So, give feedback. You guys have, at least the ones that do Scrum, you have the retrospectives. You can actually say, dude, whichever topic you want to discuss with us in the next retrospectives, we want to talk about you. We want you to change. Please let us help you grow. So the first thing is feedback. You should always do that in a team. I mean, the Scrum Master is, in fact, a team member of your team. So please start with that. Don't escalate it in the first place and just, go to your CTO or to his boss or whatever and tell that person to throw him out because he just doesn't get it. So the first thing is feedback. Feedback is always nice. Maybe it helps some people see they're not in the 20%, but rather in the 80%. No, the other way around, but you get it. One other thing you could propose how we could learn is shadowing. Who's heard about shadowing? Okay, one. Okay, shadowing
is a lamp where you make figures.
No, and it's not the lamps we had here before. I have to tell you, shadowing is actually following another Scrum Master for a certain time, being his shadow, or have another Scrum Master be your shadow, and get feedback from a guy that's in your job field. So you can actually learn from a better Scrum Master, but also the other Scrum Master can learn from you. But there's not just bad things that people do. There's some really good things that just get forgotten or get lost along the way. So shadowing is a nice concept, and you should actually do it. You can also shadow as a developer with some other developers. That's more like pair programming. But yeah.
How long do you recommend of doing that? Because then the Scrum Master is away from their normal.
Well, if the Scrum Master doesn't provide value to his team in the first place, they should actually cope with him being gone for a week, for example. But you could have, for example, a week per month, or maybe 2 days in 2 weeks, or whatever. Whatever feels natural and whatever works for the team. I mean, it's 2 days of work that his work, whatever he did, gets not done. So maybe he has to do some extra hours. Yeah.
And this shadowing cannot affect the team.
Huh? Sorry?
Cannot affect the team. For example, if you have a Scrum Master and then another Scrum Master is doing shadowing, and you're in a retrospective and you see the shadow there, maybe you are not feeling comfortable.
That might be the team, but when you're in a senior team or an educated team, you can just say, dude, we're not really happy with you being in our retrospective. That shouldn't be the problem. But when you don't, when you really don't think that your Scrum Master does a great job, you will probably want to expose that.
I'm happy with my Scrum Master, for example, but then he has a shadow or she has a shadow, but I'm not comfortable with he or she.
Okay, then just say it and don't do it. It's just tips, it's just hints what you could do to progress your Scrum Master. So if you would be okay for another person to see what happens in your retrospectives, it's good. If you're not, no problem. You don't have to do that. You could also have him like follow other meetings, for example. I know I'm like a little longer than I should be, but I hope you guys are still interested.
No,
So
relax.
another thing you could propose, that's like people that really don't want to change, when you have tried the feedback, when you have tried shadowing maybe, is coaching. There are companies that actually do quite good coaching for Scrum Masters, for example. There's also coaching for product owners. And I mean, you've all seen also coaching for developers. You can actually have external people coming in to, like, I don't know, progress you if it's about test-driven development or whatever. You can't learn everything from the internet, even though most people want to. Sometimes it's a really good thing to have somebody that you can actually talk to and that gives you feedback. And if the person comes from the outside, it might not always be a bad thing. Because for one thing, he has to sign an NDA, something. So even if he hears things in your retrospective, he probably won't know who they apply to, but he knows how the Scrum Master works and how he should have reacted in some certain cases. So coaching is one thing, that's what I sometimes do. And the last thing, and that might be the most expensive one, because I think it's around 10 grand, but there is something like a work study program for Scrum Masters. They started that a year ago when some of the Scrum trainers said it doesn't really cut it if somebody does 2 days of like theoretical training and then is the Scrum Master. That just doesn't work like that. And the work study program is some Scrum trainers that get paid to kind of give feedback to like the Scrum Master that is in that program. And he has to like do that on weekends, for example, so it's not in your working days, at least most of the times. And he gets feedback throughout the month. So he gets, for example, he has to show how the retrospective went, and the trainers tell him, okay, this was probably good. How far along is your team? Do you know your team? Sometimes they come to your company and ask questions, but most of the time it's like a really one-on-one or many-on-one with your not so far progressed Scrum Master to make him go the extra mile. So that's kind of the most expensive one. But, well, at least until now it works quite well for people that do that. I don't do that. I don't get money like doing advertisements for that. If you find the presentation online, there are links on the left or the right side where you could actually find that. But most companies don't really want to spend another 10 grand for somebody they, well, think does a mediocre job and don't really have to change that much. Yeah. In the end, what I really wanted to say is, in Yoda speak, or shall I? It's just a bit normal, you can read Yoda. If you have a problem with the person that's supposed to be the Scrum Master, change it. Do something about it. I mean, there's so much unhappiness coming from somebody that just doesn't provide value to your team. So why not change the situation? There are ways to do that. I've shown you at least these 4 slides. If you're comfortable with one or another, that's okay. If you're not, it's also okay. That's no problem. That's just hints. But if you're unhappy with your situation, change it. And usually you shouldn't, quit your job just because of one person is not good for your team. But I mean, that's the last option. That's not part of all that. Talk to people. Give them feedback. And if they still don't change, you can still escalate. But don't do it as a first step. Well, thanks for listening. I hope you had a great time. That's my name, Markus, by the way. My Twitter name, whatever. My Gmail address if you have any questions or want to write me. And all images are hosted by HaikuDeck. That's some weird beta software I just tried for these presentations. They are Creative Commons and no animals were harmed for this presentation. Thank you.